Thank you, Chair. My brother, who's an actor, has an Irish passport. I'm beginning to think perhaps I should advise him to advertise that on his profile. Have you seen the musical Hamilton, Minister?
Oh, do you know what? I haven't, and it's one of my greatest regrets. I did have tickets to go and see it, but obviously cancelled because of COVID.
When it comes back, can I advise you to go and see it? It's a great show, and there's a song in it called "The Room Where It Happens," and it's possibly the greatest song ever written about politics, because it says you need to be in the room where it happens. And the truth is, on this, ministers from DCMS have not been in the room where it happens, have they?
Well, we were not in the negotiations over visas and work permits, no.
And you know that what's becoming clear, I think, from this session is that the essential reason, perhaps, why touring for musicians and others has not been sorted and isn't getting sorted, essentially, is because within government, Home Office ministers don't care and culture ministers don't count. That's true, isn't it?
No, I disagree with that. I don't think. I mean, and I take issue with, you know, as much as I wildly respect you as a politician and a musician and your views on this. I think you're barking up the wrong tree when you think that this is some kind of ideological issue on behalf of the Home Office. I mean, I think the Home Office would have been very interested in the visa proposals that the EU were putting forward if they were if there were firm guarantees, if they were actually binding, which they weren't, if they delivered what we needed, which they didn't, and if they didn't ask in exchange for us to sign up to something that no other G7, no other big nation has ever signed up to with the EU. I mean, it's not an ideological thing, that it's a common sense position.
You did say that it's early days now, but I mean, the truth is, Minister, out there, that the woods are burning for some people at the moment. There are British businesses employing a large number of people, particularly businesses involved in touring and in the, you know, the side of it that involves providing, you know, tour trucks, tour buses, the technical side of it, the support, the engineers and so on, who effectively are in a position where they're only clinging on at the moment because of COVID. They wouldn't be able to work at all under these rules as they stand now. And yet, from what we've heard this morning, it seems as if it might be 5 years before this thing is revisited. I have an idea that many of those businesses will be out of business within 5 months. Are you sufficiently exercised by that fact? And is Bayes sufficiently exercised by that fact? And the Home Office and the Treasury sufficiently exercised by that fact to actually get cracking on this?
We're painfully aware of some of the challenges, and I think particularly for the haulage industry that you mentioned is you know, they've been really severely impacted by the COVID pandemic, and it's been, you know, government financial support in the terms of all the sort of furloughing schemes and business support that's enabled to keep most of them afloat because of a complete lack of ability to be able to tour at all. And we know that this is an additional huge challenge for an industry which is, you know, huge in you know, in our sort of national share of haulage. It's massive, and I really, you know, all I can do is assure you, Kevin, and the entire panel of our absolute determination in DCMS to work so closely with other government departments to try and find routes to sort this out. Obviously, the cabotage issue comes under the Department for Transport. They attended our working group yesterday and have gone away with a whole range of different instructions as to things that they need to do, but you know, we are painfully aware of the implications and very, very determined to try and work them through as best we can.
Steve Bryan referred to the letter that you sent to the committee, and what I don't quite understand about what the government's offer was, and we explored the whole Mode 4 issue earlier on, which clearly people in the industry didn't believe was going to work as a tactic to get a solution. But the solution you suggested would have, it would appear, have allowed touring with support staff and so on. That would have been, from your, as far as the government's concerned, that would have been perfectly fine in terms of your Brexit manifesto commitments to allow freedom of movement within the creative industry sector, including with the tour support and so on. Is that correct?
Well, you know, if you look at what we offer at the moment, we were really just expecting and hoping that the EU would effectively match that.
If the same objectives, the same principles could be achieved through a visa waiver deal, which is what Deborah Annetts was talking about from the ISM earlier on, if those same objectives could be achievable through a visa waiver deal, would there be any objection to that from the UK government?
Well, I mean, I haven't spoken to colleagues across other government departments about that, but you know, the big ifs here are, first of all, the EU were not in the position to do visa deals other than the one that they were suggesting.
Sure, but if it were achievable, it's an in principle question really, and if you can't answer it, would you ask your government colleagues whether or not, in principle, if it were those same objectives were achievable through that route, you know, whether that would be acceptable to them? Is that something you could do and perhaps write to the committee later?
Well, the only thing I would say about this is that it's really important to remember that, you know, visas, as I think I've said already in this session, are typically permissions to enter, whereas work permits are explicit permissions to take up employment, and that's why we went through the work permit route, through the tier 4 route, because if you can solve the work permit issue, the visa one generally melts away. So
I understand that it might not cover the work permit issue, and there'd have to be further work done on that. But my question is, in principle, I don't understand why, in principle, there's an objection to a visa waiver route on this, unless it is an objection that's somehow based on an ideological objection of some kind, that visa waivers should not be negotiated with the EU. So I just wonder if you could ask your colleagues that question and write to the committee subsequently.
I'm very happy to do that, but my understanding is that there's no, in principle, issue with the visa waiver route if it was one that actually delivered what it was that we were seeking in the first place.
Okay, well, that is useful to know, because it's something that might be pursued. In your letter, you did refuse to publish the correspondence on all of this between the UK and the EU, which I think, if it were available, it would make a difference. I mean, from your point of view, if the EU were to agree to make public their side of the discussions on this, would the UK government be willing to match them?
That doesn't fall under my realm of influence or decision making. My understanding is both sides published their draft proposals, but neither side published any of their draft schedules, and that included all the negotiations we took part in over the permitted activities, where we made our proposals to expand.
But does the UK government have anything to hide about what, I can see you, Alistair, and I'll come to you in a minute. Does the UK government have anything to hide in relation to what its proposals were?
Well, I think I think those kind of correspondence and those kind of details, that were exchanged between both parties in confidence during negotiations. You know, that they're the things that happen behind closed doors to develop the trade agreement, and it would not normally be appropriate to share these. I don't think the EU have published it either.
That's been done now, and what I'm saying is, if both sides were to agree to, you know, put it in the public domain so we can see, you know, where the point of difference actually arises, and you know, it might be helpful to kind of crowdsource a solution, including from this committee, if we could just have clear sight on this.
Again, you'd have to take that up with somebody else across government. I think, you know, from what I've been told, this is very much the usual position taken during negotiations. And actually, you know, as far as my department is concerned, we're now focused on working with the sector to help to adapt to new arrangements and improve on them where we can.
Alistair, were you in the room where it happens?
I was not, no. But I mean, just to add that the EU has acknowledged that the position that we've explained we took in negotiations, you know, is accurate, is correct. So I think, you know, we've been clear about what that was.
So what would be the harm in publishing the full details of those negotiations?
I'm afraid I would have to just repeat what the Minister said. You know, this is sort of decisions taken elsewhere in government, and you know, our understanding is that this is the normal position around publishing documents shared during negotiations.
Minister, are you disappointed that somehow or other this is allowed to become an issue about immigration when it's really nothing to do with that?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure it has become an issue about immigration. I think it's an issue of trying to get the best opportunities for our creative workers to be able to tour overseas. And it, you know, it was never an issue about immigration, other than the fact that the EU deal, which wouldn't have delivered the things we were asking for, was asking in exchange for us to sign up to something that no other G7 country would sign up to. So, you know, it's not, I think it's too simplistic to say it's an immigration issue. I think that, you know, that massively undermines the sort of thrust of the discussion.
Why do you say G7 countries there? There are countries that have agreements that involve visa waivers, aren't there?
Yeah, but they're, you know, not countries like Canada and Japan, who have a big trade agreements, but there are countries like I think St. Lucia and others.
Yeah, and one of the problems with Canada and Japan, isn't it, with the Mode 4 approach, is that basically there's a very specific definition in their agreements with the EU, which makes it very difficult for the EU to change the Mode 4 definitions just for the UK without changing it for Japan and Canada, isn't it?
Well, I mean, the whole issue around that is that you know, there is no precedent for what the UK was trying to do. There are 11 activities that don't need a work permit in the FTCs with Japan and Canada. But then again, I mean, those FTCs with Japan and Canada didn't exist until about 7 or 8 years ago. And, you know, so it's not set in stone. You know, there's no reason not to have added to them. You know, and not least because actually, I think, as we probably pointed out in our negotiations, there are other types of short-term business visitors who do provide direct services, such as after-sales technicians, that could have been included, that already are included in the 11 activities. And so, of course, there was a precedent for being more flexible here.
Okay. Perhaps we should invite some witnesses from the European Commission in as well. Anyway, back to you, Chair.